He earned over £20 million during his football career, played at the highest level, lived the dream every kid on a five-a-side pitch is chasing. And then he lost it all. Today, we're doing something different. Instead of ranking the richest footballers, we're looking at the ones who had it all and somehow ended up broke. Bankruptcy, bad investments, and lifestyles that outran even 7- and 8-figure salaries. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly how a footballer can earn more in a week than most people earn in a decade and still end up with nothing. Let's get into it. Here's the uncomfortable truth about football money. Earning it and keeping it are two completely different skills. Most players are handed life-changing sums in their late teens or early 20s with zero financial education and an army of people around them who benefit from them spending, not saving. So let's start with how it actually happens. The number one killer of footballer fortunes isn't gambling, and it isn't nightclubs, even though those play a part. It's bad investment advice. Time and time again, players hand their money to financial advisors who funnel it into property developments, hotel chains, or business ventures that quietly collapse, taking the player's life savings down with them. Take a look at the pattern across dozens of cases in English football alone. Players who earned Premier League wages for a decade or more, only to end up filing for bankruptcy within 5 years of retirement. Not because they blew it all on cars, because nobody taught them how to protect it. Now let's talk about lifestyle inflation, because this one's brutal. When you're 22 years old and suddenly earning £50,000 a week, the instinct isn't to save, it's to upgrade everything immediately. The house, the cars, plural, the watches, the entourage of family, friends, and hangers-on who all somehow need helping out. And here's the trap. None of that spending scales down when the football stops. A player's income can drop by 90% the moment they retire. Their spending habits almost never do. That gap is where fortunes disappear. Divorce settlements have quietly wrecked footballer fortunes more than almost anyone talks about. High-earning athletes with short careers and long marriages are exactly the profile that divorce courts hit hardest, and several major cases have split a player's entire career earnings straight down the middle, sometimes worse. Then there's gambling. It's the most talked about cause, and for good reason. Several ex-players have spoken openly about losing hundreds of thousands, even millions, betting on football itself, in some cases while they were still playing. The access to cash, the boredom of downtime between matches, and frankly, the culture around it in dressing rooms all combine into a genuinely dangerous mix. So who does this actually happen to? A few names come up again and again in financial documentaries and investigations into football bankruptcies. Players who were household names during their careers, earning wages that would set most people up for life, who ended up filing for bankruptcy, losing properties, or working regular jobs within a decade of retiring. The stories vary. Bad property deals, expensive divorces, businesses that failed, advisors who disappeared with the money. But the pattern is identical every single time. Nobody protected the money while it was coming in fast, and by the time it slowed down, there wasn't a plan. Here's what's genuinely wild about all this. The players on this list weren't stupid. Many of them were disciplined enough to make it to the top 1% of the top 1% in one of the most competitive professions on earth. The failure isn't intelligence. It's that football, as an industry, still does almost nothing to prepare players for life after the money stops. And that's actually starting to change. Newer generations of players, guys like Mbappe, guys advised by modern sports agencies, are building brand businesses and diversified portfolios while they're still playing, specifically because the older generation's cautionary tales became so well known across the sport. So here's the real lesson buried in all of this. The players who end up richest later in life usually aren't the ones who earned the most during their career. They're the ones who treated their playing years as the start of a business, not the whole business. That's the real gap between the richest footballers we covered last time and the ones we just talked about today. It was never really about how much they earned. It was about what they did with it while the cameras were still on them. If this surprised you, imagine how it feels for the players themselves, realizing it years too late. Let me know in the comments, which of these stories shocked you the most? And if you haven't seen our last video on the actual richest footballers in the world right now, go check that one out next, because the contrast between these two videos says everything about football money. Subscribe if you want more of these deep dives into the business side of football. See you in the next one.